All right. Welcome to another episode of the Consistency Corner podcast. I'm excited for our guest today, Liz Nickson, who is a copywriter. And we're going to be having a conversation today all about how what you say is not as important as how you say it. And Liz is going to share some tips around messaging, copywriting, using the right language, and why words are so freaking important. And it's so funny when I say that out loud because I remember literally being in meetings, in corporate meetings, talking about messaging, whether it's for a website or even for a sign in a store, and people being like, well, people don't read, so it doesn't matter what you say. That's not true. It does matter. It is true that people don't always read, but those who do read, it definitely matters what you say and how you say it. So, Liz, I'm excited to get into our conversation today. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Can you share a little bit about your background and what you do in your business and your entrepreneurial journey with us?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on here. I've been very excited to join this. My phone has been reminding me for the last couple of weeks, and I've been like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm so excited for this. So yeah, I'm Liz. I'm a brand copywriter for online service providers and coaches who want to reach more while doing less in their business. Also, excuse the kitty in the background. He's just chilling. But yeah, we definitely talk about all things that, and this is for people who specifically already probably do all of the writing in their business, right? So they're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what they need to post and what they need to write in their captions, or maybe they're not really putting anything in their captions because we have carousels and reels and videos now. But they have other things to do in their business. They didn't sign up to be a copywriter. They didn't sign up to do social media all of the time and spend all of their time in there. They signed up for time freedom, right? And so as a copywriter, I help give them back that time so they can focus on in their zone of genius, and whether that's serving their clients or wanting more time for themselves in their personal life. So how I got started was I went to school for communications and PR, specifically advertising. When I went to college, I was hell-bent on being a journalist. I wrote for the high school newspaper and I loved it. And then I took one journalism class in college and absolutely hated it. I hated how perfectly you had to write. I hated how all these rules you had to follow. And it just didn't feel authentic to write that way and to spread news that nobody really wanted to hear about anyway. So that's when I got into advertising and really loved it. From there, I started working for a company that did marketing for real estate agents. And I was just helping create their Facebook business pages. And then I stopped working because I had my oldest. And about 8 months later, they kind of created this remote job for me, and I never went back. So after that, when I realized that I could work from home and be home with my kids, that was one of the biggest things for me. And so I started my copywriting business in 2020 in the middle of the crazy pandemic, which was a huge risk that I was taking, but I knew I wanted to be home with my kids, and I knew that this was the time. If I was going to do it, this was going to be the time to do it because everybody was starting to work from home and things were shutting down. From there, I had my first client within a week of launching, and they saw a 20% increase in their revenue that year, which was crazy because they were in the wedding business. Of all things that were probably not happening that time of year, they saw a huge increase in their sales because of their web copy. Yeah. So I knew from then that that was what I was really meant to do. And I've loved being able to help people connect with the people that are really in need of what they do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you said about when you were in journalism, that it was you didn't align with the super professional, super perfect, very rigid, strict rules. And I think that has a time and place, but when it comes to selling and connecting with people on a human level, I actually so appreciate the fact that we have gone to more of a conversational style writing, and infusing personality is something that we are able to do in our copy. Talk to me a little bit about how a copywriter is able to, or how you're able to get that brand voice for your clients so that when you're writing, you're truly writing in their voice versus your own.
Sure. Yeah. So what I like to do when I first work with my clients is have what I like to call a copy core call. And that's where we kind of sit down and we talk about everything and anything under the sun about their business. So that could be just their story and where they've come from, their hobbies and things that they're really into, who they serve, and what their ideal audience is in need of, their problems, their struggles that they're facing, and the solutions that they can offer to them. And then I like to even go like more into just their personality with a questionnaire. And that could just be like I like to tell my clients to think about the things that they say on the day to day, the words that they use, the things that they say, the movies that they quote, just to think about those things all the time and write them down. And that helps me kind of visualize putting those things into their copywriting so that it sounds more like them and feels more like them. We also talk about their branding values and kind of describing how they like to sound online, which also helps me find the right words as well.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about not only using the words that your client uses, but the words that their client uses, the end reader, and kind of why that matters so much.
Yeah. Well, copy is intentional. Where if you're just writing to put posts out there, that's not doing you any favors and it's wasting your time, honestly.
Mhm.
You have to really sit down and think about your goals and also think about the goals of your clients and what they are currently in need of, what they're searching for, what they're watching, and what kind of content they're absorbing right now. So, a lot of copywriting is actually researching, doing a lot of the background research to find out what their clients are in need of and what they're looking at, the kind of content that they're looking at right now, to figure out what it is that they might be thinking about, to help write copy that helps them visualize what it's like to work with that person or what they're going to get out of it in the aftermath. Not so much what the journey is like working with them, because yes, that is important, but that's almost like the features of being part of, you know, a
Mhm.
coach's program or something versus what they can expect and how they can expect it to change their life in some way.
Mhm. Yeah, so when we're talking about like what you say is not as important as how you say it, you could be saying this program includes XYZ features,
Right.
but what are the benefits? Because
Exactly.
what the person is really looking for is benefits. And I think that's one area that I see experts in different verticals and different professions get really stuck on is they want to, as a business owner, they want to talk about the features because the features really matter to them
To
and they
them.
like don't
Right.
realize that it doesn't matter as much to the reader. The reader is seeking a benefit.
Sure. Well, and you can also take the features and put them into more conversational terms that their reader is going to be able to visualize instead of just like, I saw a post earlier today that was like selling ice. It was just selling ice cream. And you wouldn't say that, oh, this is just a cold dairy product that you can eat. Like no one cares about that. Um,
Mhm,
So, you have to think about it in terms of, oh, well, this is going to cool you off on those hot summer days, and you're going to be making memories at the same time while you're going to remember those times that your kids had melted ice cream on their faces. Like you're going to think back to those. So you just want to think about taking the features and writing them in a way to help your client or reader visualize having that and why it would be beneficial to their life. Yeah.
yeah, so that visualization, and I think this is something that often can get lost in the social media world, particularly on Instagram, because
Mhm.
it's already a visual platform. And people
Right.
think like, "Oh, well there's an image. I don't need to paint a picture with words." But that deepens the relationship so much, don't you think?
Absolutely. I tell people all of the time that yes, a photo can speak 1,000 words, copy can speak 1,000 more. And I
Mhm.
think that's so important, especially for people who are using reels and carousels and putting all of their text into a carousel. is great, but then you also need to kind of have a point and have tie it all together in your captions. What do you need your reader to do next? They need to know,
Mhm.
okay, this is great information, it's valuable, but now what? And I've seen so
Mhm.
many posts out there that have missed that opportunity to tell their clients to take action or have a point in their posts because they don't maybe they just don't
Yeah.
realize that it's so powerful in that way.
Well, and I think too, we oftentimes when we're writing for ourselves struggle with feeling salesy. And
Mm,
like to your point, that call to action, we don't want to be pushy. We don't want to be salesy. We don't want to turn people away. But if you're building a relationship through nurture content and you're talking to the right person, you're actually being kind by being clear with your call to action, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I said earlier, copy is intentional. So yeah, absolutely having your goals lined up and writing your posts in a way that are leading up to those, having the nurture ones that are still building connections on the back up, throughout the week and throughout the month, but also having the ones that are putting yourself out there and telling people about your offers because those are really important. And we are all, you know, guilty of that. I myself have a hard time even writing about myself just because it's easier for me to see it from to see my clients from my point of view from an outside perspective versus you writing for yourself and really feeling confident about your offers and feeling like someone actually needs this. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's one reason that working with a copywriter or a strategist or a messaging expert or a team can be so incredibly helpful because it's somebody who's from the outside looking in versus you on the inside looking out and trying to like flip the image around and understand and know all the nuance that like you just can't see with your own eyes, unfortunately, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly that. And as a copywriter, and this is probably like for all service providers, but the way I see copywriting is like it's the wingwoman of your business. We do all the
Mhm.
talking while you do all the eye batting from the bar. I'm not here to take your shine. I'm here to put the spotlight on you, to brag about you, talk about you, and help you show up confidently in that way.
Yeah. And, I would imagine that really effective and intentional copywriting is going to make the sales process that much easier. And at the end of the day, like as a business owner, you are in sales. And so if you can make your sales process, those sales calls, those conversations, you can make it an easy yes for the client because they've already consumed a lot of your words, then that's just going to make it more fun for you to even be able to serve them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly like you said. You're putting the content out there for them to see and kind of get to know you and know the offers that you have. Because, and it's not, yes, it's a lucrative, like Instagram is a lucrative place. There's so many people who do offer the same service, but we all offer it in a different way and we're all different. So I love the ability to mold and shape words in ways that connect the right people with each other. And that one person might not be meant for you, but there's somebody out there who is. And you just have to be able to, write in the way that connects with those people.
So let's talk about that. Uh, Connecting with the right people and finding the right audience. I think when we're, starting out with writing, it's easy to fall into that trap of like pleasing everybody and being super vanilla. And like, I don't want to push anybody away or I don't want anybody to think that I'm not for them, but like, you're not for everybody. It's okay, Can you talk to me a little bit about how you work with your clients and how you kind of maybe even help people get past that? Like, it's okay to be polarizing.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things that I do is I like to kind of strip out words that are constantly used in the space. We don't we use them because they work is what they say, but there's so many buzzwords out there that are so vague and broad that it only helps your readers more and the audience that you're trying to reach more when you're using language that really speaks to them,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think now that we're seeing more and more people using ChatGPT and AI in
Yep.
general, that like vanilla overused words is only getting worse. And I was just reading something the other day about engagement on social media, and it was talking about how engagement like across the board is down. And I think it's because our content has gotten watered down. We've seen so many copycats, so many like, oh, I'm just going to do what she did and hope it works, but that doesn't work. And eventually people get bored and then they're not engaging with content at all.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard because we like the idea of AI being useful and helping us. And it can be, especially for generating ideas and helping with research and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's just watering down or using that very buzzwordy language, no matter how, and I've played around with it a lot. And it's really no matter how specific and detailed you get, it still can only do so much for you.
Mhm.
And, you know, I tell people AI can be great, especially if you're just starting out and you really don't have the money to invest. But I will say, you know, you're probably still going to be doing a lot of the research on your end, a lot of the editing and writing on your end. So are you really saving time in the long run?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the thing. It does save you time, but it saves you different kind of time
Different kind of time.
because you're maybe not writing, but you're researching, you're editing, you're refining, and sometimes having a professional copywriter work with you on, let's say, a sales page is going to be a much better use of your money and your time because then you can take that content and repurpose it
I was going to
into.
say, and then if you work with a copywriter, you're going to have copy that you can literally use anytime, anywhere in your business across platforms so that you're staying consistent in your branding too. If you
Mhm.
just continue to go back to AI, chat GPT and ask for new ideas, you know, that's great, but it, it doesn't remain consistent across the board because you're
Yeah.
changing it, if that makes
Mhm.
sense to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that consistency in terms of repetitiveness. I know a lot of times we feel like if we're being consistent, people are going to get bored of our message or they're not like I've already said this, I don't need to say it again. Can you talk a little bit about like why that's not true and we do actually need to be both consistent and repetitive with our content?
Yeah, I think it's just a mindset thing. We are naturally are our worst critics and we're the hardest on ourselves. So when we see ourselves post the same thing over and over, we're like, are we even original? so, but yeah, it's so important to be consistent, especially across all platforms, so that because if you really think about social media, it is that first initial impression that you're making on someone. So
Mhm.
they're coming in, they're getting to know you. It should definitely be who you are, what you do, who you serve on your social media. Um,
Mhm.
and then they can go from there. You're taking them on the very first step of the customer journey. So you have to take them, get them on a sales call, whatever it is that your goal is to take them from social media to the next place. So if and not to mention there's new people coming through to your profile time and time again. Maybe they've seen it once and then came back weeks and months later and they're like, oh yeah, I remember this because you've been consistent. And you know there's going to be people that see your story one day and don't see it the next day too. So nobody's really noticing if you're being super repetitive or not. It just, and if they're there to see your content, that's what they're there to see. They're not
Mhm.
mad because you've posted the same thing before.
Yeah, and I think about that even in terms of like long form content and email marketing that like new people are constantly being added to your list. New people are coming to your website. So repeating yourself. I was talking to a friend who hosts a podcast and she's been doing it, I don't know, 6 months or so. And she was like, "Oh, I'm kind of struggling with what to talk about." And I was like, "Go back to your first 20 episodes. Talk about them again." Like it's okay. It's okay to repeat yourself. And I know you have children and we know that as moms with your children, you have to repeat yourself 10,000 times. And it's no different with your audience and with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. So in terms of repeating yourself and kind of like not getting bored with your own content, what are some ways that maybe working with a copywriter can help infuse some freshness and some new ideas into the way that you talk about your business and what you do?
Yeah, I think it's just getting, like we talked about earlier, getting that outside perspective and being able to see different corners and different areas of your story that you might think are super mundane, but
Mhm.
I can see them as really valuable to your ideal clients. And you might not be seeing that because, we're just used to saying the same thing over and over, and we're used to living our own same life every day.
Mhm.
But to someone else, that might be, really inspirational or might have value of some sort to the person who's looking for whatever it is that they're offering, whether
Mhm.
it's, support in their own business or saving time, things like that.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, I know a lot of my clients have started out as maybe a solopreneur and then grown into a larger brand. And can you talk a little bit about, and I think you've gone through this with your own business in going from Liz Nickson copywriting to like having a brand, Mom Under the Palm,
Right.
being kind of your overarching brand. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in writing for like an individual person versus a brand or a company?
Um, sure. So it's really just going to depend. I mean, the little things that are going to change are the values, not so much who you're speaking to, but in the way that you're saying it. And reiterating the values and the your why for the business and the brand. Um, Specifically, like what I did was that I actually had two separate identities. Like one was I had this professional, business pages for my copywriting business, thinking that I needed to be very professional and put on this face that, people trusted and things like that, even though it wasn't really who I was. It's just the way that I wanted to be seen online because I thought that's how I had to look. And then I had, Mom Under the Palm was more of like a personal blog, lifestyle blog that I had made a lot of real authentic connections in because I was more myself. So
Mhm.
what I ended up doing was merging, from the professional into my personal brand and just encompassing everything that I believe in and all of my values. And, I think it was just part of that mentality of like you needed to be perfect and that it needed to that whole journalism mindset, and stepping away from that corporate life that you can still be, a full brand without having to follow all of the rules, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So
Mhm.
I think it's just really understanding your values as a brand. And then obviously you're going to have to change the verbiage if you're a team from a solopreneur. I have had someone who she's a branding photographer and she used we all on the website, but she was running the whole show. And I was
Mhm.
like, girl, you got to step up and just say me, if that's what the brand is, if the brand is just you, use that verbiage because that's what people need to know. So
Mhm.
there's little details that could, that you can change just depending on if you're going to be solo or if you're taking your brand on as like a boutique agency or a full business. But knowing that you can have your values and your brand without having to write that very watered down overly professional copy. You can still be personable and conversational and still be respected as a brand.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like getting really clear on who you are, who the brand is. And I know for a lot of business owners, and I've worked with clients in this, that like they are just a solopreneur, but they have visions of growing. They do want to add to their team. They want to become bigger. And so they will use that like we or our language. And there's no right or wrong. It's a
Right.
matter of what you feel comfortable with and then owning whatever it is you do unapologetically. And I think it's
Absolutely.
the energy of the like, oh, I don't know if this is right, or oh, what will people think? That's what quite honestly is like repelling the audience when you don't own it. So owning it unapologetically, this is who I am, this is what we do, this is who we help, and then standing firm in that and knowing that, again, like we talked about, it's okay if it's not for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, the part. that my clients have to take action in. It's like, I can give you the content, I can give you the copy, but you have to put it out there. You have to be willing to say, this is me, and
Hmm.
owning it exactly like you said. And typically, my clients feel way more confident because they have all of this consistency that, you know, highlights not only them and their brand, but their offers and who they're speaking to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So good. Well, these were all really thought provoking things that we kind of talked through today. And before we wrap up, I have a couple of just kind of get to know you questions. And as we're talking about branding and standing unapologetically in who you are and brand values, I'd love to know, what is one of your brand values and how did you land on that?
Sure. I think the biggest thing one of the biggest values for me is um, just being ethical in your business and copy. There, we talked on this with AI and everything. It's just that there's so many things that feel like they've just been used over and over again to say the right thing and to make people spend money. For me, it's about ethically growing businesses and connecting them with the right people who truly need their services, and being
Hmm.
able to do that in a way where, it still aligns with my values as, just a person and a mother too.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think it's easy to go down that path of like seeing what other people did and knowing that it worked for them, but
Right.
then realizing like, okay, but that doesn't feel right for me. And being okay with that and knowing that like if it doesn't feel right in your gut to say that or do this because so and so expert or guru said it, like listen to your gut, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who like to use specifically dollar signs at, with their marketing. And if that works for them and and that speaks to their ideal client and they feel good about that, then that's great. And then there are some people who don't want to do that at all. And that's
Hmm.
still okay too. I want,
Hmm.
I want my clients to know that they don't have to push numbers, only as their results. They bring
Hmm.
results in other ways too that feel good.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. I love that. All right. Well, and along with brand values, we always talk about personal development or professional development here, as that's one of
Yeah.
our brand values. So I'd love to know, what is one of your favorite personal development books, or if you can't pick a favorite, something you've read recently that resonated.
I read about 20 books this year. So I think they're one of the biggest ones that I read this year, and it was recommended to me, was called A Woman's Guide to Power Unbound. Um, I forget who wrote it. I have it somewhere in here, but it was really good. And it talks specifically to women who want to kind of step into their power, to feel more empowered in themselves, not just in their business, but and to show it more confidently. How to and for me specifically, I'm someone who was always saying yes to everything. It really helps you define your boundaries, going forward, both in your personal life and your business. That was a really good one. And then another awesome one I read this year was ULA for women, which was also kind of like breaking down each part of your life and the areas in which you want to really focus on and work on. And then the other areas that are like doing really well, so that you can kind of see the whole picture of like where you want to grow, and then each chapter talks about how you can grow in each of those sections.
I love that. And I love that, it helps you look at maybe what's working and celebrate those things that are
Yeah.
working, because it's so easy to like look around on the internet or even the personal development space and be like, oh my gosh, I'm failing, I have to fix everything. But like celebrate what is working and take the time to acknowledge those things, the work that you have put in, right?
Absolutely. And, as a copywriter, I do read copywriting books, but, this is for anybody in their own, whatever industry that they're in. You don't have to only read personal development books that are in your industry. There are other books that can help you grow in other areas and in your business that you might not have even realized.
Yeah, I mean, I find that sometimes even if I like take a break from reading personal development or business books and like read a couple fiction books, like
Yeah.
it can spark some new ideas and creativity that like you didn't even expect just because it gets your brain thinking in different ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As a writer, I love reading fiction books because I love to find like a writer's style that I really love, like the way that they talk in their books and in their stories helps me also be like kind of find that more conversational tone too
Hmm.
when you're just like how do I talk like a human again when you're
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
talking your goals or your content. So yeah, any kind of book really can help you in your business for sure.
Yeah, I love that. All right. And so then my last question is we love to talk about consistency. And so I would love to know something that you are consistent with, either in your business or your personal life that you are really proud of.
Oh, okay. One of the things that I'm really consistent in is honestly never giving up. Like, if there's one thing, yes, we have slower days in our life and in our business, but I am always going to be, I'm always going to go back to my why. I'm always going to, whether that is like, it doesn't have to be a consistent action, but it's a consistent mentality that I have that
Mm,
I am
mm.
still here. I'm still going to show up no matter what. Business is an ebb and flow, just like life is. And that's okay. I'm still here and I'm going to show up in the ways that I can every day.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my goodness, so good. Well, Liz, if our listeners or reader are interested in connecting with you, where do you
Yeah,
hang it online? Where can they find you and learn more about maybe working together?
absolutely. So I am definitely mostly on Instagram. I can be found on Instagram at mom under the palm, my little rhyme that I've got there, my Florida lifestyle. But yeah, I'm always happy to connect with other service providers, coaches, small business owners, and yeah, just shoot me a message, come say hey, and I'd love to get to know you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a fun conversation. I really appreciated it.
Thank you so much, Ruthie, for having me.